to Coast, Customer Success in Practice. I'm Tamara, and I'm here with my co-host, Kat. We're customer success managers, so we manage teams in California and Florida. And we're super excited to be here today because this is a very crucial topic that we're going to be talking about for customer-facing teams, but like, let's be honest, in life. And this is feedback.
That's right. Feedback. It's not just about our customers. It starts with how we work as a team. So I feel like what we're going to talk about today, Tam, is yes, we're talking about it through the lens of customer success managers, but I think a lot of our counterparts or colleagues are going to find this really helpful because we talk about feedback all the time. And so before we can even handle customer feedback well, we need to build a culture where feedback flows internally in a way that's productive and actionable.
Yes. And honestly, as a manager of a team, this comes up almost daily for me. So, and I love this topic. And I think Kat and I actually had a situation at work, and I immediately messaged her and I was like, Kat, we got to talk about this on the podcast. It's so top of mind for us. Today, we're focusing on internal feedback. So we're really going to think about how we give it, how we receive it, how do we use it to grow, how do we use it to coach our teams, how to coach each other. And then in our next episode, we're going to go ahead and flip the script and we're going to talk about customer feedback.
I love the direction that we're going in. So let's start with why internal feedback matters for customer-facing teams. Whether, like I said, sales, customer success, support, you're always communicating with your colleagues, with leadership, with other managers. It happens so many ways. So let's dig in.
Yeah, exactly. It does. It happens so many ways. And I think the way that we give and receive feedback internally impacts how we show up for customers, how we show up for each other. Yeah. Some things I think Kat and I have talked about and that we've noticed are, what are some qualities that strong teams do, right? So strong teams give feedback that helps people grow, not just criticize them. Strong teams are open to receiving feedback without taking it personally, right? Being able to separate the business from the personal, and trust that feedback is meant to help them, not harm them, like that, assuming positive intent.
Exactly. If your team struggles with feedback, it can create friction, poor communication, misalignment, and a lack of growth.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that people struggle with is how to give internal feedback that actually helps. I know, as a former teacher, we always talked about the feedback sandwich with parent-teacher conferences. And now, in the corporate space, we've heard frameworks like radical candor and SBI, which stands for situation, behavior, impact. So there's all these different kind of frameworks, right? And ultimately, it's not necessarily the framework that matters when you're giving the feedback. What really matters is that you're specific. So instead of me being like, hey, Kat, you need to be better at calls, right? That's not super helpful for Kat. But if I said, hey, Kat, on today's call, the customer asked us about X. I noticed you weren't sure how to answer, so maybe we can review that together. Kat has something very concrete, very specific to understand how to improve, right? Another thing that's super helpful is making it actionable. So feedback should help someone improve. So instead of me being like, hey, your emails are really clear, your emails suck, right? Not helpful. It's helpful to say something like, when you email your clients, adding a summary at the top might make your message clear. So making it actionable can really help someone contextualize how to grow in that moment. And then the last thing, and perhaps the most important, is really focusing on impact. Framing the feedback around the bigger picture helps the team, helps the customer, helps their growth, really understanding what it is that I'm giving you feedback on. What is the impact of that specific piece of work?
I love those three things. So being specific, actionable, and focusing on impact, those are all three critical components of what matters when giving feedback. One thing I would add to that, Tam, is timing. I would encourage people to give feedback as close to the moment as possible so it's relevant.
The timing is so important. And sometimes, I've seen too where people are like, hey, I talked to so-and-so about this. And I'm like, great, how did it go? And they're like, well, it's kind of too late because it happened again and again. It's like, yeah, let's do that in the moment kind of too, and thinking about time. Kat, do you think that the way you give feedback changes based on who you're giving it to? For example, if it's peer-to-peer or manager-to-manager or manager-to-peer, cross-functional manager to individual contributor, what kind of changes in those nuances in those different kind of power dynamics?
I love this question. And it's not an easy one because I think it's circumstantial. Naturally, we are going to be a little different when we're giving feedback, whether it's upwards, downwards, or across. However, I do think that the key points you shared about being specific, actionable, and impact, I still think those are critical no matter who you're giving the feedback to. But what I will say is naming the dynamic between the person and yourself before giving the feedback so that you disarm yourself and it comes from a good place.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were saying earlier, assuming positive intent is really important. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I'm like, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about if I were going to give you feedback and the feedback was like, hey Kat, you seem super out of it on a call today, I would probably be like, hey Kat, I'd call you up, and Kat and I are, peer to peer. Kat, like, you seem super out of it today. Are you okay? What's going on? Right? If I'm having a conversation with my manager, I might say, hey, I noticed you, do XYZ today. Is there something going on? Is there something I can help with? And I would probably be less casual about the way I gave the feedback and like more formal probably. The words I think would probably be similar. So actually it would probably be the tone that would maybe be a little bit different.
Let's talk about receiving feedback. Now that we kind of discussed the good ways of delivering it, what's it like being on the other end?
I think it's uncomfortable and it's hard because people don't want to feel uncomfortable. And even when it's well intended, it's natural to feel defensive, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've all had that moment where you're getting the feedback and you ask or think, wait, what do you mean I need to improve? What are you talking about?
Right. Or like, I thought I did that really well. And it's good to get that feedback and it's helpful to shift your mindset. So how do we kind of shift our mindset? We talked about this earlier, assuming positive intent. Most feedback isn't personal. It's about growth. One thing that I think is really important, I've actually learned a lot about getting better at this. And to be clear, we are all learning and growing together, but listening before reacting. So kind of taking it in, asking questions, reflecting before responding, and clarifying, I think, if needed. So if the feedback is vague, asking, can you give me an example? When did this happen? What did that look like? And then I think showing appreciation is important because the person on the other end is uncomfortable too, usually. So giving feedback is hard, getting feedback is hard. So even if it's tough to hear, thank the person because they're trying to help you grow.
Yes. Feedback isn't about what's wrong with you. It's about leveling up. It's about getting better at what you're doing. And the people who are giving you feedback care about you, I find 99.9% of the time.
Yeah, it's like the Brene Brown, clear is kind. So to wrap up, internal feedback is the foundation of a strong team. It's something that, if you want to get better at handling customer feedback, you have to start by improving how you give and receive feedback internally.
Absolutely. One thing I want to add is when you give feedback and when it's very critical feedback, I encourage folks to remember to reach out, let time pass, and call out, hey, I know we had this conversation a few months ago, and I just want to say I've noticed how you've changed X, Y, and Z. So for those who are going to be giving feedback soon, put that in the back of your mind, make sure to follow up.
Yeah, it's affirming.
Yeah, very affirming. So for our listeners, here's your action step this week. Give one piece of constructive feedback to a peer or ask for feedback from your manager, see how it feels, and apply what we've talked about today.
Yeah, and it's uncomfortable. It just is, right? But in every uncomfortable conversation, like we talked about a few episodes ago, there's growth in the relationship and it hopefully makes relationships stronger and that communication, it's really valuable. So next time we're going to tackle customer feedback, how to prioritize it, what to ignore, and how to say not right now without damaging the relationship.
Thanks for tuning in to Coast Customer Success in Practice. See you all next time.